My name's Gerard Batten. I've lived and worked in London all my life. In June 2004, almost 250,000 Londoners voted to make me their voice in the European Parliament as the UK Independence Party MEP for London.
City Hall, please.
Now I'm asking for you to vote UKIP again, this time in the London Mayoral and Assembly elections.
London is now more crime-ridden, congested and overtaxed since the post of mayor was created 8 years ago. My top priorities as London Mayor will be to cut crime, to get traffic moving and to reduce the tax burden.
So if someone has a crime, all they get is a slap on the wrist. There's no real punishment for their crime. I think that's why they keep doing it.
I think most people would agree with me that in many parts of London crime is out of control. And the only way to tackle that is to get the police back on the streets preventing and detecting crime. I'd only give the police one target in London, which is to drastically reduce the crime rate.
It's going to cripple everybody. It's going to cripple all the little business people. The big boys are all right, there's nothing to them, but the small businessman, he's the one that's going to suffer.
London is a busy city. It's always going to be busy. But what I would do would be to get rid of the congestion charge. I'd scrap the congestion charge, scrap emission charges. They don't work. They haven't eased congestion. They haven't eased pollution levels. And they are just a tax on the motorist. I'd minimise parking restrictions, minimise traffic restrictions, so they work on the principle of safety first, so that traffic can move, people can park, they can get around London easier than they can now. And of course, I would also like to reduce tube fares and make tickets more flexible.
I think there's a lot of people losing money. Small businesses are losing money over congestion charge. You know, I can understand a few quid, but you know, the amount of money that people pay is colossal.
One thing I will do as mayor is to crack down on the thousands of cars driving around London without tax and insurance. That will ease congestion if we take some of those off the road. Let's crack down on them instead of persecuting the law-abiding motorist. What about value for the money, council tax? What value do you think you get out of council tax?
Not a lot. Not a lot at all.
We've seen council tax continually rise over the last 8 years without really delivering any more value for council tax payers. As mayor, I will only spend money on those public services and big projects that benefit all Londoners and London equally. Well, here we are in Stratford. You can see the Olympic development site over there, and the Olympics will undoubtedly benefit Stratford and London. But we weren't told the truth about the costs. The original estimate, I think, was something like about $2.5 billion. It's now 10 or 12 billion. Nobody knows what the cost is going to be. But what we do know is that Londoners are going to be saddled with that cost for the next 30 to 40 years. Now, what I'll do as mayor is to cap the cost of the Olympics to the original 38 pence per person per week for 12 years that Ken Livingstone promised us. Do you think you'll vote for us?
Yep.
Okay.
If you're standing in my borough,
We are.
then I'll vote.
Okay, all right, that's
I'll
very
give
kind of you,
somebody
madam.
else a chance.
Thank you very much. Anybody watching this may say to themselves, well, I agree with everything he says, but he can't win, can he? That's not true, I can win. In this election, typically only about 35% of the electorate bother to vote. That's what normally happens. I mean, 65% of people are not voting. If enough of those people bothered to vote, then they can actually make a difference. It's perfectly legitimate to use your vote as a protest in this election. Goodness knows there's enough to protest about: unlimited immigration, the European Union, not having a referendum on the Lisbon Treaty / European Constitution. Why not use it to send a message to the politicians? Why not punish the politicians and tell them, you're not listening to me, you're not listening to what we want? And you can do that by voting for me. As London Mayor, my guiding principles will be justice and common sense. I will not pander to minorities, multiculturalism or the politically correct. Under my administration, there will be no money for cronies and quangos. I want to serve all Londoners equally. As far as I'm concerned, there will only be one class of Londoner, those people that live, work and pay taxes in London. I want to unite Londoners in a city we can all be proud of.
Remember, these elections are not just about the mayor, they're also about the London Assembly. They're fought on a system of proportional representation, and we can win.